This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal, medical, or mental health advice. We speak from our personal experiences and opinions. The views expressed are solely those of the individual speaker and are not intended to malign any group, club, organization, or business. Welcome to Confronting the Line, where we discuss the world of personal development and discuss the sometimes fraught line between exploitation and transformation. My name is Mark Tafoya, and I'm here with Ann L. Peterson. Hi, Ann.
Hi, Mark.
Well, it's been quite a week.
Couple weeks.
Quite a couple weeks. Yeah. We've had a lot of stuff happening. This is, you all who are watching this are seeing us at the beginning of this experiment that we're on, right? Where we're bringing some things to light that haven't been brought to light, specifically with, one personal development company, Landmark, but, in the world of transformation in general. And you see, we've started alarms going. I don't know if you can hear that, but I'm here in New York City, and where the alarms are now sounding, and people are talking about their experiences in life. And a lot of this has obviously the whole impetus, the catalyst was Anne, you writing the book, Is This a Cult? In March, and since then we've had a lot happen. And this last 2 weeks in particular, we've shared some of the stories. We've published stuff. Obviously, if you're here watching, you've seen our previous episodes. And there's been a lot of stuff happening offline. So we're here just today to just talk about that and our reactions and our experiences.
Mark, I literally have sort of like life. You know how we have these key moments in life? I'm a mom, right? So I have sort of life before my kids. I have life with my kids. I have life with my adult kids, right? I kind of now have life before the book and after the book, because so much has changed for me. I'm probably in the writing of my second book, right? I'm in the living of it, and then I'll write about it later. But because I did find that a very cathartic and healing process to that writing. I'm looking for in a couple of weeks to have Angela, my book publisher, on. We'll tell some of that story, but it's just so much has happened. But I think I was sharing with somebody earlier today, and she's like, "Oh, catch me up." And I was just trying to catch her up over the last 5 days of happenings in the world of what we've opened up. And, so, yeah.
And like a lot of what we're talking about is healing, right? We're talking about people first being able to tell their stories and really tell the truth about things that happened, and exposing a part of this world that isn't so pleasant, that a lot of people who have participated in this kind of work just had no idea about. So I really appreciate, including me.
No,
right?
really,
I can appreciate that people are seeing it for the first time and are just shocked, and also that the instinct is to defend it. So but all this good stuff came out of it, right? And so like that's kind of why we wanted to get on today, is to talk about that. Yeah. So go ahead.
Well, it's just, I know I keep saying this in part because I'm still marveling at myself, and for those that have read my book, the story, the whole story is I'm living this life, I'm transforming the world, I'm a senior program leader, and it was tough, it was hard, it wasn't all that, but mostly, even to this day, I have mostly really fond memories. I really do. And and then I start finding out some information, right? Specifically information about Werner, who I was now working very closely. And Werner is the source of this organization, Landmark, that I was a part of for most of my adult life. And that information forces me to re-examine. And so really I wrote my book to share the journey of re-examining, because I kind of knew that this information would be coming out in the public domain in the coming years or two, because nothing stays secret forever. And I knew that would be coming. And so I was like, oh man, millions of graduates of this particular modality are going to be where I was, which was having to really look and see, wait, what? Was that real? Was it not real? Like all these questions. So my book was about that. Then when the book came out, the response, why I say I have before and after response, has been so surprising to me. I just really had no idea that the culture that I had grappled with that was around Werner was so deeply embedded in the organization. And one of the things, which I actually almost feel a little silly saying that. And if anybody's wondering, for the people that know me for a long time, they'll go, "Oh, yeah, she is that naive." I am. I really kind of am, and I like
Yeah.
that about myself.
But how could you not know? People will say, how could you not?
Exactly. That's a very good question. I'm sure some therapists will have a really good time with that. But it was really sincere for me. I really didn't know. And I was eager, as I had been moving through my own spaces, to get to seeking safety. Because that, when I discovered the folks at Seeking Safely, it was a bit of a lifeline for me, because it was a way for me to do what I had been doing, which is, coaching, putting on programs that are impactful and change people's lives, and do it safely. Because I am a mama bear. Anyway, there's a long story about how I rescued my mother when she had been raped and beaten when I was 5 years old. Since I was 5 years old, I have been saving humanity, and that's an integral part of my ego identity. And I work kind of spiritual teacher. We've been working on not dismantling that, but loving it actually for a few years. But that is part of who I am. I'm a mama bear, and so I want to protect, and it's truly authentic for me. So then, when the book came out, and all people start coming to me, nobody was more surprised than me, saying, "Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you." You're talking about what we've been talking about at Quiet Corners for years and years and years and years. We're talking about it publicly. There's lots of reasons why I chose that. We can get into that or not, but
yeah, you started the conversation.
I really wanted to warn Landmark, because I saw them re-tying themselves to Werner, and I knew that there was this stuff coming about Werner, and that the right around Werner. And look, I don't make Werner, I'm not making him wrong. I have empathy and compassion for him. I don't approve, and I won't tolerate abuse, but I don't hate him. I don't have an axe to grind. Quite the opposite. I really wish him the best. He should be on a beach somewhere with a Mai Tai and Hanukkah. Just, the guy's earn some peace and light, go have it. But so that, then discovering, because along with the thank yous have been a lot of people coming and telling me their stories. And pretty soon, it's been pretty undeniable. Those stories are the same stories that the people who were close to Werner were telling. Then I started to hear from people who were there at the beginning. And I've been talking, you can say a little bit about this stuff below, but I've been talking to them and learning the whole history that I kind of came in the middle. I came in and started participating in Human Potential in 1995 or 6. I'm keeping it up. So that was kind of towards the middle/end of that era. So I've been going back and learning about the origins, which has been really sweet. I hope we're going to be sharing that in future episodes. But so the whole thing's been really a wild ride. And you, by the way, so then you, at some point, I met you early on, and you tell your story. And then you came forward and told it publicly. What's that been like?
So now the experience is kind of crazy, right? The last 2 weeks, for anyone who's interested, the full story I tell on Brian Nord and Erik Rojas' podcast, which is called "How Did I Get Here?" And it really is like, God, how did I get there, right? And I tell the full story, so you can find it. Very easy to find. But the gist of it is that I had long been a participant. I was in the team management leadership program. I was classroom leader for the team management leadership program. My goal was to be a communication course leader. And so in order to do that, I became a seminar leader, and I started leading seminars for Landmark. And I discovered, once I got really into the seminar leader program, that that was really where it shifted for me from a participant to a program leader, of the real sense of control and the real sense of giving yourself over to the organization, and not just giving yourself in terms of myself as a vessel for transformation, but give up yourself, give up your identity, give up these things about you that they would say are not really seminar leader. And a lot of that included really important parts of my identity, including my sexuality. And they kind of invaded my sex life, my personal sex life, and said, that's out of integrity. That's wrong. You shouldn't be doing those things. And I said, actually, I'm going to do those things, and it's none of your business. And I quit. And so the shocking thing for me to find in talking to you and others is that that's not the common response, that most people don't just go, nope, okay, I'm out. You can't mess with me. And just now, after having told my story, I've now, like Anne, I've gotten so many people contacting me and going, me too. It happened to me. Or geez, I always knew that was the case, right? And just some really heartbreaking stories, you know. And like I said, I've heard from about a dozen people in the last couple of weeks where we've had a long conversation. They've told me their whole story, you know, and they felt safe. They felt like, okay, now there's someone who gets it, because they've, you know, because I've shared, in a way, you know, it can be embarrassing. You know, this is embarrassing stuff. You know, no one wants to talk about their private sex life and how other people tried to say that's bad and wrong, you know. And it's just the numbers of stories is crazy, right? Or people that I hadn't been in contact with, right? Like one of the themes that's really emerged is every single person who's dealt with, whether it's control, physical abuse, mental abuse, sexual harassment, has said that there really was a drive to protect the graduates.
Yes.
To take care of the people. So like, you know, I was leading to people in the seminars, to people in the team management leadership program, other introduction leaders, that, you know, as soon as you leave, it's like, you don't say anything. You don't talk about it because you don't want to damage the work. And so many of us have been conditioned to that we've just kept silent. And it's been an effective way to kind of keep this, you know, in the background.
I want to say something about what you just said about we don't want to damage the work, because I've really been processing this and, you know, and working with a lot of experts in the area of high control groups, cult and cultish groups. You know, there's a whole spectrum out there. And, you know, we're even seeing, you know, cult of personality, cult of brand, right? You know, I love Chris Shelton's cult as part of culture. If you have people, you have cults. So, but
we have political cults now.
Yeah. So
always have, really.
learning about those dynamics. But one of the things is how we language things, right? Is really, really, it is through which human beings think and relate and know the world. And so this thing you just said about we want to protect the graduates, and that never occurred, because I've talked to hundreds, and many, if most, have said, we know when you ask the question, why did you stay? That's the most common answer. And why I didn't protect the graduates, especially for staff. There's different levels, but for staff, it's never to protect the graduates. For people who were program leaders, they want to see it through. They want to see those graduates move through those spaces. And they are, you know, part of what as you're doing that, particularly when you were doing it for volunteerism, right? For assisting was, you know, it's also feeding you that you're making that kind of difference. But it's funny that we never once, you know, thought, wait, what am I protecting them from? What about myself? What about protecting myself? And, you know, this is particularly for all you former staff out there that most of them are listening and they're not talking because it's not quite safe to talk yet. But, and they're counting on us. I got 2 or 3 messages, several messages this week that are like, keep going, keep talking, because we are now talking, Mark. We're not talking just for ourselves. We are talking.
The cat's out of the bag.
Well, and we're talking for people who can't yet talk for themselves for whatever reason or another.
Yeah.
But this is one of the things that I really invite us to think about. It's like, well, wait, protecting them from what? And then as you start to confront that and we're like, oh, wait, there was abuse. I remember, I almost can remember the moment where I was sitting several years ago, it was about 2022, late 2022. And I'm hearing about these, you know, these people are coming to me that are working around Werner and telling me these stories. And I'm talking to a friend who's a lawyer, and she's like, do you know that's assault? And I'm like, what do you mean? You know, and she goes, and that's abuse. And so I've like since learned about what's assault and what's abuse. And then I didn't know, did you know that I didn't even know there was emotional abuse, really? Like I'd heard those words, but I was kind of like, yeah, that's just a context.
Yeah.
That's
Toughen
not a
up,
thing.
Buttercup.
Yeah. So, and then, you know, as those that read know, my daughter suffers from complex PTSD. So I've really gotten a hardcore on the court education in trauma and complex PTSD and so forth. And So I'm really understanding so much, as is the whole world. What we've learned about trauma in the last 10 years would fill the 200 years of volumes before it. There's so much important work going on to understand those mechanisms as neuroscience gets in. But that whole thing, protect the graduates. I'm going to protect the graduates.
Yeah.
I just invite people to ask, what are you protecting them from, and who's protecting you?
Yeah. Also, it's like, well, that time is over. The cat, like I said, the cat's out of the bag. And, now it's like the graduates need to know. And to what end? Like a lot of people, so a lot of the criticism that we've seen online has been like, well, oh, you're just out to destroy the organization, or, you just have an axe to grind, or you're on it, or,
Incomplete. That's my
you're
personal
incomplete,
least
you're on
favorite.
it, you just want to sell more books, you just want to get more clicks on your station and this and that. And like, look, I know for myself, I would like, I've honestly had many times this week where I thought, God, okay, I've told my story, now let me just back off. I don't want to talk about this stuff anymore. But like it or not, sometimes you're the person who steps up and has to be the one, right? This is a big thing we learned, Lemmer. You're either the one or you're not. So I guess so we're the ones. But to that end, I think I'd like to address some of the discourse because it's gotten a little messy this week, right? And we should be the first ones to just go, yeah, it's gotten a little messy, and to be responsible for our part in that. Right. So like, should we talk about that now?
Yeah, I just want to say one thing before we move on to that, which is somebody said something to me in the last 24 hours. I just hadn't thought of it all. He was Brian Nord. Brian Nord is quite wise. Anyway, but said, I think somebody had said to him, because of course he and Eric are also now, the people who are speaking publicly are getting a lot of communication. And he said this, somebody had said to him, please keep talking, because while you're talking, they are doing better because they have to. So it's kind of like, with some other things when, bad behavior is exposed, here's one of the side effects, why is light the best disinfectant? Because in the light, that stuff can't happen. That's part of why I chose to talk publicly, because one, I knew hundreds of people had brought all this stuff privately in every form possible over the course of 50 years, and it didn't change anything. So I knew that route was fruitless, not just from my own efforts, but other efforts. But because sunlight is the best disinfectant, sunlight is where we can see what's going on. And when the sun is shining and the light is coming in there, you can't do stuff in the light that you can do in the dark.
Yeah. And also, look, you can't make an impact. You can't actually shift anything until you know what's so. This is one of the big distinctions, right? You got to be with what's so. First, what is so? What is so is there has been this history and these things have happened and many of us have stepped over it over the years. That's what's so. And,
then we need to heal from that. That was a step I didn't anticipate. And I've had to stop the action actually on my business plans, on what I had in mind. I've stopped the action in my professional life in a certain way, because what emerged was this tremendous need for healing spaces. And you can't heal in the same space in which you got sick. You can't heal in the same condition where you got sick. You have to leave that condition. You have to leave that environment, you have to leave that language, heal, and then perhaps you can come back. You might be able to come back. You might be able to pick up certain pieces that were valuable, whatever. But you have to step away to heal. It's kind of like, if I were to use addiction, any kind of addiction, but alcoholism or whatever. You can't heal from alcoholism while drinking. And there isn't less drinking that helps you heal from alcoholism, right? Like, you have to go away. And I actually met this really great therapist that did explain you don't necessarily have to never ever take a drink again your whole life. But for sure you can't take a drink until you've healed not only alcoholism, whatever spurred you to, take that substance in the first place, but the underlying conditions, right, that made you susceptible to that. Like, anyway, this isn't any different than that.
Yeah. So shall we kind of talk about some of the messes and clean them up a little bit as best we can? So we had 2 episodes that we released this week, which was our interview with Alan Kahn, who was a former Landmark Forum leader. And some stuff emerged from that was troubling and upsetting to a lot of people, including ourselves after the fact. And, we discussed that a lot. It's very clear if you look at the channel and if you look at our social media that, we said what we said about it, and that, we've warned people that, hey, this could be unsettling and troubling. And I honestly don't think that Alan came on intending to say the things that he said and or intending them to upset people. I think I want to give him, again, we always speak for ourselves. I'll speak for me, you speak for you. But like, I didn't get the impression that he was out to do anything nefarious. And I just didn't think he realized the impact it would have. But then, the discourse on Facebook, at least, has been kind of contentious. And, I think it's important for us to be responsible for that right now, and to kind of say, whatever there is to say about it. So
I think there's a lot of healthy debate that's come out of it as well, which has always been that's our whole thing. When you stand on the line, you can look in the dark, you can look on the light, you can see a lot more on the line than you can from one side or the other. So that's the basis for our whole conversation. So yeah, there's contentious. What I'm seeing is that a lot of the contention has to do with, if people are in the dark, they're seeing the dark. If people are in the light, they're seeing the light. Like, there's not a heck of a lot on the line, but hey, that's part of why we decided to air it, was to let people decide and choose for themselves. And I just want to speak to, I also agree, I've known Alan, of course, many years, and I do believe that his heart is good. And, there's no evil over there. There's some ego over there, like with all of us, but there's no evil. And I think that he did come on with just in re-looking at it, that he may have had an intention. I think his intention was probably good. It was my personal view is that his intention was to try and provide a healing way for people. And in my opinion, what he doesn't realize, because his entire experience, even though he's quite well read and studied, but his whole experience of the healing way is from the human potential kind of era. And primarily he spent most of his adult life as well in the sort of landmark Warner.
This kind of ontological pursuit.
Yeah. Well, I don't like that. They kind of absconded with ontological. Ontological is a veneer put on. Ontological is a very anyway. We'll do a whole show about it. I won't go on.
Yeah. But I mean it in the sense of the whole. They're verbally saying ontologically, meaning like who you're being and how you're being about a situation will help you to get out of it or get behind it, as opposed to psychological.
But it's almost none of it is about actual ontological. It's all the mind. It's all mind over matter. The whole, I can, with my intention, with my mind powers, I can turn the light green. This is the whole human potential movement. This is not just Landmark, right? Landmark's of some of the big kids on the block. But I've been studying this stuff and really having fun talking to a lot of people that have been part of it, reading some of the academic papers. It's actually known that whole era of self-development, all the way from Tony Robbins, he's one of the kids in there, but all of it is now known as the me work. And I don't mean me like the healing me. I mean me like me, mine, and mine. My power, my productivity, me, I. So my point is just that how we thought about healing, for example, really was sort of had a lot of bypassing. Had a lot of spiritual and emotional bypassing in it, that I really could create a new context. For example, Chris Sheldon and I are going to be having a great conversation about context, and we can't really need and whatnot, but I could create a context, and it can shift my mood, but shifting my mood is not the same as healing my trauma. And this isn't a Landmark thing. This is all through the human potential movement that has been allowed to run free, honestly, because it sells tickets. You got into,
and it makes us feel good, doesn't it? Doesn't it just make you feel good to go, I can have command over this stuff that used to have a hold on me. It makes you feel good in the moment, and it does have power to a certain extent, but it doesn't heal the past. It doesn't heal trauma. It doesn't solve for some of the conditions that got us to where we got there with. Yeah.
One of the things I love I've been listening to Dr. John Hunter's work, right, who studies bipolar disorder and he's done probably the most recent work on the study of LGATs, which is a particular form of training, large group awareness trainings. And Landmark's programs have been historically large group awareness trainings. And but he describes in somewhere, it might be the episode he did with Brian and Eric on how I get here, but he's talking about when we're in that hypomanic state or manic state, which is what happens when you get a highly elevated emotional state, or in human potential, what's known as experiential. So, but what's going on in the brain is you're in this super hyped state. So he was describing it, and he said this really cool thing that really stuck with me, which is when we're in those manic states, we run around and we do a lot of stuff. We feel like Superman. We can like lift the building. We can, we just feel so much power. And why they're dangerous is because we often take a lot of actions during those times. We spend a lot of money. We, change our relationships. Like
we ask that person to marry us, or we say, I want a divorce.
Right. Exactly. I mean, Alan even told this funny story about his wife. Like, you have to and she goes, I just did I think it was S training. And she goes, I'm divorcing you. I'm leaving you and you need to go do that. But I'm leaving, and I just thought I had to laugh. Inside, I was laughing. So I was like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what Dr. John's talking about.
Yeah, we get all excited. Yeah.
And I've studied a lot in mental disorders. But here's the thing, it's a little bit of a crapshoot if the stuff you do in those manic states, and they can go on for months, by the way. LGAT studies show that it typically, following a course that brings you up on a very experiential high, it lasts 7 to 10 days on average. But it's kind of a crapshoot if that's good stuff or bad stuff. So in my case, I said to my abusive now deceased ex-husband, you're right, I think we should get a divorce. Because that's what threw me. That was the big emergency that put me in the forum, is he said he was going to leave me and my son and my daughter. I was like, what? And so I go do the forum, and then out of the forum, I'm like, yeah, that's a good idea. And my marriage counselor even comes and does the next forum, right? Well, that happened to be a really good decision. But what I now know, and that speaks of me, but what I now know is it literally is a bit of a roll of the dice. And there's a lot of people who in that state have made decisions that that are harmful or not in their best interest, or that they later regret or whatever, which is the case, whether that happens to you because you did LGAT or because, you're dealing with a, chemical imbalance, or what. It's all the same mechanisms that's going on in the brain, whatever's causing it, whether it's an experiential course or drug high or whatever.
Yeah,
the things we do when we're high don't always turn out good.
Sometimes they're great, sometimes not so much.
Exactly.
So look, for my part, I want to say that I think going forward in the discourse, I think where I'd like to stand is simply in just repeating that there are things that are at issue, and we as a community are either going to address that, or we're going to continue to have a blind eye towards it. And I personally am not interested in the blind eye anymore. But that said, I think I want us to focus on, or at least I'd like to focus on, really centering the stories of people who have been impacted, and just let those stories be told and play out. And, it's not so much about blame as this is a situation that we can no longer step over, because I think it's very easy in the discourse for it to be like, oh, all you want to do is take down this company. You have a personal axe to grind, or, that kind of stuff. And so, that's been a lot of the surprising stuff online about the people that you were like, well, people that we thought were close with, or that at least we had fond memories with, like feeling like, they think that we're attacking when we're just revealing, and that, it's easy to feel attacked in those automatic responses. And I'm trying to have compassion for the automatic response, because we all had a moment where we just, when we all discovered like, whoa, this is happening, but I've built kind of a lot of my life around this. I've really been supporting this for so long. Now you see something, you're like, well, there's that moment, you have that choice, right? You're either going to be complicit in it, or you're going to call it out, or you're going to, choose belonging to the group, or, being authentic to yourself. So I don't know. I think I want to focus on compassion for wherever people are in this when they're discovering it, especially if they're the people who have wanted to defend it or have defended it, for so long.
I'm with you in the compassion, and sometimes to get to compassion, we need to go through our anger. I'm learning so much about healing. I was anxious to write my book and be like, okay, done with Landmark. Now let's get on to Seeking Safely. And I'll, of course, use all of the good and the bad things I learned in my 20 whatever years, 25 or something years of being in all those positions. But it's not about that. I'm very apathetic actually about Landmark. It's not kind of really my business whether they survive or not. What I am adamant about, though, is people not being hurt. That I am adamant. And look, you can count on me. If I see somebody being hurt, I'm going to say something. I am going to call the police. I am going to call the fire department. I am going to call the social worker, whatever, because that's who I am. That is one of my values. And so
Sure.
there's going to continue to be revelations. And one of the things that I saw a lot, Mark, out of the response to the way Alan brought himself to that interview, which I do just have to say, we were kind of framing sort of a puffy piece that was telling the fun stories of the past, and we knew that we were going to be, Daryl and I have been talking about it for a long time, that embedded in some of those fun stories is acknowledgement of things that have been bad and work, right? That was it. But in the response to it, one of the things I saw that I've never seen quite so clearly in myself and in others is in that human potential kind of self-help world as it has been, on this side of the line, emotionality, anger, especially negative emotionality. This is in the spiritual communities as well. Somehow the light side, the right side, the better side is this kind of Zen. I'm not impacted. Yeah, which is all up here. That's why I was saying it's not actually about ontology. It's all about the mind, actually.
Yeah.
So
that and bypassing emotion.
Yeah, and it is a kind of bypassing. And I've had to really work and learn in the community that is, come to the book club. And we're working on that. Somebody shared these fantastic posters this week about, different feelings and how to identify them and what's happening. And we're having to go back and learn that stuff. But we're also learning, we need to learn a tolerance. We need to have a tolerance for people being angry. Because anger is a very, very, very healthy thing. Anger is a cleansing, it's a fire. Fire cleanses, fire cleans. And the thing, though, is to not get our anger on others, to not spit it out, right? So that's what I've had to learn. When I'm angry, to not go, "Rah!" like a dragon's fire, right? That hold my fire and have it fully. I have trusted people. I've built a community around me now that's I have the people that I just need to say this. You're one of them. Thank you. You let me say a lot of things this week. I appreciate you so much. And it's if we avoid the anger or we try to control others' anger or whatever, everything stays kind of stuck. So I just really saw that because I saw Alan with his big heart and compassion actually start to see in the comments that people were "Wah," out of some things he was saying. And in that moment, guys, when you're in these things, you can't process what's going on all in all those comments, right? So you're well, you got to stay in the thing. And, and I saw him start to see that and, and kind of go, oh, wait, because he didn't mean to reactivate anybody. That wasn't his intention. And, but nor is it most people's, but it happens. And it's not, then it's about who are we going to be when it happens? Are we going to give space and grace? Are we going to defend and suppress? And I lost my cool a couple times this week for sure. And, but mostly I aim to go for the space and grace. And I'm also learning to hold my boundaries too. If people are spitting fire on me, turns out Rachel Bernstein on our session on Thursday, we have our recovery group now with Rachel Bernstein. which is lots of room, folks. Come join. We are learning so much. But she was so great. She said, Anne, hey, it's all right for you to say, I'm not open for communication right now because it doesn't feel safe. I am still processing my own feelings and my own anger and my own confusion and my own and until that's fully processed and you feel really settled and grounded, getting in communication is a really bad idea. My marriage therapist is talking this too, by the way. She saved our marriage in the pandemic, teaching Dave and I this.
Yeah.
So
I've learned that
but
too.
this week was a big
when he
test
slams
for
the
me.
door, just leave the door slammed for a while.
Exactly right. I know. I bet with Elaine too, as she's dealt with her complex PTSD episode. Yeah, you have to kind of sometimes you have to go. Oh, and you've been such a great partner this week because somehow we've managed to not both be spun up at the same time. So
at the same time, yeah,
really good. But yeah, so
going forward, I think we're just gonna, my focus anyway is gonna be on, hey, look, we've opened a can of worms, and the can of worms is now open, and I'm not gonna jump in the fray back and forth on every little thing on social media. I'm gonna let the episodes speak for themselves, and everyone's reaction and response to that is valid, and what we say is a valid space for you to refute. If you refute it, then great, no problem. Right. So I don't know that I'm going to push back on every little thing.
Yeah. And I want to give some space though to people that are, because for some people actually speaking up, even though it's super messy, is a breakthrough. And that is valid too. So that's when I say space and grace. Like I want to have space and grace for people, even when they're messy, because I recognize, and when my daughter first started learning how to speak up and start to process it. When you experience childhood trauma, what I learned was she didn't necessarily learn how to communicate her needs, right? So then she's trying to communicate her needs, but it's coming out all sideways and upside down and screamy and yelly and, seemed dangerous and all this stuff. And I had to learn. And
not to mention that's just a normal part of teenage development anyway, outside of the trauma part of it, right?
But that gets suppressed for a lot of us, right? Because we don't get to go through those phases because we kind of get indoctrinated into being good. This is a big girl thing. We got to be good. We got to be good. We got to be for others. We got to be good. So we're not necessarily good at asking for what we need. So then when we start asking for what we need, it's pretty messy. And I love the diagram somebody shared in our book club group of the emotions in your body and then what they mean. So fear, turns out there's something trying to be communicated. I thought that was really cool because I was like, is it fear or anger? It's the red. I don't have the diagram up in front of me.
I'm not sure, but the point being that there's the raw emotion, and then it's there's something underneath that. There's a response that's inside your body that's a physical, what's the word when your adrenaline gets released, right? It's all of that somatic stuff, right? That it's connected to, right? That it doesn't. It's not. Yeah.
Well, somatics, you have a belly response, you have a gut.
Okay.
Gut response. Okay. That's our somatic, and that actually comes first. So we've had it this is another human potential thing. Human potential has taught us that all starts in the mind and goes down. It's totally the other direction. No. It starts in the gut, right? That's why we go, ooh, gut reaction, and then heart, and then emotions, the feelings.
I got this funny feeling. Why didn't I listen to my funny feeling? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
and
totally.
then inside it, even in that interview with Alan, there was a point where my body was responding, but it would take hours for my insight to fully understand what my body was telling me. And, I have great teachers. I'm so happy. It's really good when you get kudos from your spiritual teacher, right? So I was working with my spiritual teacher yesterday and I was telling her about this whole thing. She goes, wow, you did a really good job doing 3-part processing. And I'm like, what's that? So this thing that I just shared with you about the sensation, which is the gut response, the somatic response, the feelings, which is the heart response, and then the insight, which is the head response. And I talk about this in my book. It's when those 3 things are all aligned, that's when it's a good time to speak. That's when it's a good time to go get it complete with the person that I don't really like the complete thing. There are items. I understand that.
That's the language. Right? That's the language that's used.
So that most of my week was spent doing that work. and then simultaneously, just really dealing with, you and I are very aware that the conversations we're putting out have an impact, and we did a lot of thinking. We got a lot of counsel about what would make it safe. We learned all about trigger warnings and content warnings. I didn't know about that. So we
Yeah.
are learning on the job here.
And by the way, I called it a content note because I sometimes see if I see a trigger warning, I'm like, it almost makes me go watch it. I'm almost like, ooh, like it's that rubbernecking car wreck. Ooh, I gotta watch this gruesome thing, and I can really appreciate that for people who really are traumatized and dealing with that it's important that they know, okay, this is something that might be an issue for me, right? But I like to call it a content warning or a content note as opposed to a warning. But it is it's a warning, right? It's like for anyone who really needs it, then it's important that they see that and they go, okay, I need to be prepared to watch this, and I may not watch it, or I may not watch it yet, or I may watch it with other people, or I may have someone on call to talk to immediately after I watch it. That sort of thing. I think it's the responsible thing to do, and
well, we're learning.
I want to address that it's not sensationalism in doing that. Like, titling the episode the way we titled it wasn't to get more clicks. It was to let people know there is some sensitive material that's being discussed here. And, we want to make sure you're fully aware. It's all informed consent, right? You are clearly and aware, and that you're choosing to see something that might be upsetting.
And, this is all what you're talking about, as I was talking with the various professionals in this, because I always get at least 3 points of view, about even the same thing. I didn't talk to just one therapist. I talked to a trauma specialist. I talked to a PR person. I talked to, to try and understand that. I read articles, all of that. And one of the things I was struck by as I was going through that process is how much we're learning. So again, not just because of the way self-help has been structured around it's all in our mind over matter, produce at all costs. There's some themes that have been a big part of, we can say, coming out of the industrial age into the technological age, and how we relate to ourselves as human beings and what our role is. And we're learning. And even in my daughter's trauma journey, what was available to her even 5 years ago versus what's available now. It's like night. And we're just really learning. And so I just invite everybody to stop and think stop sometimes and go, oh wait, what do we know about that now? And we have these mega computers on our fingertips, and because that was a big part of the process this week for me too. It's like, oh wait, what is appropriate? What is not? And then the other thing I want to acknowledge was our live studio audience, which, we'll do some like this, where you and me will do some live, some, different ways. But honestly, our live studio audience, Mark, they gave us a big edge. They gave us a big edge because
we got a warning. That was a great, good, early, the canary in the coal mine.
In the coal mine, yeah.
Because they were like, whoa, and I was like, oh man, and some people were really triggered, and again, I have compassion for that. It wasn't our intention, and we certainly weren't trying to leave them hanging in any way by not immediately stopping the action and going, wait a minute, let's talk about this. But yeah, it's like they let us know. Wait a minute.
Yeah, and we listened.
Yeah.
We listened. But I will have I didn't choose what Alan shared. Quite the opposite. In fact, I stopped him from sharing some other things because Alan had a lot of private discussions. We know a lot of stuff. It's not all appropriate for the public domain. So we didn't choose that stuff. That wasn't on. We wanted to give a platform for Alan to tell us all about what S training was like and becoming a forum leader and all that. He chose what he chose, and I honor that and I respect that. And we decided in big part to let it play out pretty much as it happened, so people could choose for themselves. But we also really listen. That's one of the things folks can count on from me for sure. I'll let you speak for yourself. But that's where I was trained, and was to really speak from the listening, be listening. I think listening is the biggest superpower magic tool anybody can have, and it's something that you work on day in and day out. You have. It doesn't come natural. I mean, I don't know if it comes naturally or not, but not in this day and age when we have so much information coming at us all the time.
And there's the part of listening, which is being with the other person's experience. And then there's a part of listening where it's literally just, okay, I like, let me shut my yap. I know it's hard. It's hard for me. I know it's hard for you. We're both talkers. But like just going, and we're seeing that in the discourse too. Like when people come up to defend, or they say, no, it's not like that, or they start using the distinctions and da 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 da. It's like, some people are saying, for now, can you just listen? Just get these experiences, and there might be a time to defend, but just people
For
have not
those that
talked
want to
about this
help,
stuff.
for those that want to help, if you can just listen and learn, listen and learn, listen and learn, listen and learn. So I learned that in the Black Lives Matter thing. So I was like, well, what is going on here? When that happened, and I'm like, I love people and all people, whatever. And then I started reading, listening. I started to discover my own racism that was sort of in me without me even knowing it. My own biases and things.
Yeah.
But I couldn't have done that if I hadn't taken on listening.
Yeah.
There's something else.
And some of it occurs as the responses can occur as an all lives matter kind of response, right? Like we always know that's so tone deaf when someone says, Black Lives Matter. Yes, but all lives matter, right? We're going to do a walk for breast cancer. Yeah, but what about colon cancer? It's like right now we're talking about this thing. So just let's listen about this thing, because you can sound like that jerk who says, but all lives matter. I don't see color, like all those kinds of platitudes that we've been given all these years, right? And that people who haven't looked at these things wouldn't see and don't realize that there is a certain privilege in not having had to think about these things, whether it's racial issues, right? Like I say, like a lot of things you think you can look at it that way because you've never had to deal with it. You haven't had to walk down the street and be called a faggot, right? You haven't had to walk down the street and someone cross the street because of your skin color. Like, so have a little space for that. You've never been forced to deal with it the way the people who are dealing with it have had to deal with it, right? And that's part of it. It starts to sound like, well, all lives matter, if you defend the work before you've really heard the experience.
That's what's so exciting about the times we're living in. I think there, and it's my intention that our show feed this, and we'll muck it up from time to time. I have no doubt we already have in some ways, but I think it's exciting that we're having these conversations. I think it's exciting that we're getting in there and willing to get to the line and look both directions and look forwards and backwards and talk about it. And we're, I personally am really excited to be alive in these times when I get to examine that. And I have appreciation for how threatening it is when because we've ingested these ideas, we've ingested and then become these ideas. And then there's organizations. This is the problem with what we're seeing with a lot of these high control groups is they end up inserting their personality and superimposing it on top of yours, their values on top of yours. And you're still going to die, but they can get real quiet. And then you end up, something will happen and you realize, whoa, I've been compromising a value that I maybe didn't even know I had. But now the impact of the compromise is so loud and so big that I can't put it up. That's kind of what happened to me to have me write the book. I was like, oh my God, it wouldn't put me down. Like I kept trying to go past this, go past, but nothing in my life would move. Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing.
And it's in the realm of your native ethics, like the stuff that's in here, like this is who I am and what I believe. And I've stepped over it a number of times now. And the seeing that you've stepped over it is like getting hit by a truck sometimes.
And then you have to have I say this so often in our book club group, right? But have grace for yourself, because when you see that you've stepped over it, the first instinct for a lot of us is to go, you idiot, what is wrong with you? You make yourself, that super ego comes in there and makes that like, you've been so wrong. What's blah, blah, blah. I had that. I honestly had that a little bit after the interview. I was like, oh my God, I missed stuff. Like, I didn't know that he thought that way or this or whatever. Right. Like I had a whole and, and I sat down and, worked with one of my teachers and did some meditation and was like, oh, wait, calm down. Like, you're not even talking. That's you you're talking to. And so, and it's okay. Like it's being a human being living in this life, in this dimension, whatever you believe, is messy. But the mess is the good part. The mess is where that's where the lessons are. The mess is where we learn, but only if we're willing to show up for it. Only if we're willing to really be in there with more questions than answers.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, why did I think that way? Why have I done that? What is that feeling? That was my big thing when I was like, wait, what is that feeling in my gut?
What is this feeling? For my wicked fans will get that, right?
when I the interview, we were talking, and I was like, "Was it something? Is it good for you?" And and I'm like, "Yeah, I think so." But I feel kind of funny. I don't know if you remember me saying that, but I was like, "I feel kind of funny." I don't know. It would take me.
There's something unsettling.
Yeah, to figure out. And I kept being more and more unsettled, but thanks to my, I love my diamond books work ethic, and to stop and witness and think, and then some very, very dear things that some thoughts came from me that hadn't been there. They weren't part of any of it, right? And they were just provided the most amazing listening, and as I figured out what I was doing. So
we really wanted to come, to you guys today and say this, to be like, look, that opened up a lot, and it got a little messy. It wasn't our intention, and it's part of the work that we're doing, and we're not going to stop doing the work, which is to really create an environment where people can tell what really happened, but also to participate in some way that isn't harmful. So that's the main thing that I think that we wanted to come on and talk about that today.
Can I add one thing to that? I've very presently, you're the nice guy in this scene. I thought it was the other way around, but
it's not that often. Yeah, I'm usually not the nice guy.
No, I think
I'm
you're
usually the asshole.
I'm not a bad guy, but I am.
I'm an asshole. My life doesn't work.
I think I got beat on that.
Right.
The whole, we are going to tell the truth. I am not going to tolerate. I'm done. I'm not going to aid and abet in hiding that can.
Don't get me wrong. I wasn't saying that.
Yeah, but I think it's important, right? Because the other thing that happened across a few weeks was all this stuff, these PR announcements, these big mass layoffs, reorganization of Landmark, which, hey, good on them. Like, I don't have anything against that. But there was also quite a bit of obfuscation, and
absolutely, that's the word.
And
that's definitely the word.
People had a lot of questions, and so did we. And so we looked. I no longer take, well, really any organization, but I don't.
In this day and age,
definitely don't take that organization for its word, because I've just found too many lies, and lies come in a lot of forms.
Or you can say inconsistencies, right?
Inconsistencies. They're like masters at the inconsistencies and obfuscation. Which, by the way, because I'm teaching the Safe Practitioner program right now, which is also super fun. We're really exploring, well, wait, what does it look like to be a safe practitioner? And one of the things that you take into a safe practitioner promise is accuracy. But accuracy can be weaponized. And I would say our friends of the past are very good at weaponizing accuracy. You can use accuracy to hide. And so we will continue to call out what's the truth. But when we need truth, we need to have verifiable, third-party, uninterested evidence. If we're saying something on this show,
including court filings, right? Like, there's stuff
that's the primary. Well, and we recognize that court filings, complaints aren't facts. Complaints are an accusation. So there's a difference between a complaint than a judge's decision. Business documents filed with the federal government.
I meant in the sense of, when we're talking about bankruptcy, there are filings that a company makes that are where they're attesting to something to the government. They're saying, hey, this is what happened in our business, and we're making this request, and and some of what was said in the press release. And by the way, a lot of this is gone over in detail by Brian and Eric in their podcast, which is called How Did I Get Here? And they did that last week. You can find that. We'll have a link in the show notes, as people say. Yeah, because we're not going to go into that, but it's like there were actual court filings. There were the bankruptcy filings and the statements, the business statements that were done, in the official way. And then there was what was said on the press release. And people are going, I'm trying to reconcile these two things.
But see, this is a big part of seeking safety. So one of the real principles that we're going to be coming out a little bit with a little program people can do ahead of choosing programs to help them figure out, wait, is this a safe one or not safe one? And I'm pretty sure this is going to be my life's work. Like, I'm 55. This and a fair bit of vacationing and some other playing times with family and friends, right? But big aspect of seeking safely is to find check. Somebody sent me a message last night, or in the middle of getting their master's degree as a social worker, and they want to work with teens and young people. And they sent me a thing, and they go, "Hey, what do you think of this guy's work?" I look it up, and I'm like, "Ah," but then I'm like, "Ooh, that's my first response." But let me look until I went through 4 or 5 sources and texted a friend of mine who is an expert in that field. And I said, "What's the current thinking about this guy's work?" And he said, "Oh, it's garbage." So I was, which was kind of my first inclination. But my point is to investigate and look. And then here's another thing I'll add to that. Just because something's garbage doesn't mean you can't get value. Just because something is kooky or what doesn't mean you can't get value, but you're the one who's bringing the value, not the thing, not the idea. So, that's a big message in my book. But a big part of seeking safely is so this organization that, I'm no longer an investor in, I got my money out in 2022, but many people are, and they want to know what's going on. They want to know, like, wait a minute, what's going to happen to my retirement? And then there's people who have love for this organization. And for so many years, we were convinced that we were the organization. And we were stakeholders, not even just those of us that had ESOP. You didn't have ESOP, but you were.
I didn't, but still, like that, right? There was that line of, this is an employee-owned company. The employees own this company, and at least in theory, if it's an employee-owned company, shouldn't they have a say in it? And a lot of people are saying, well, they don't really have a say in it. They have the either the benefits or the impact from decisions that are made, but they're not a part of the decision. I think we all have this idea that in an ESOP, there must be some meeting that happens every few months and everyone votes. Most employees that I've spoken to have never had a chance to vote on any decision that was made.
Yeah, well, that's only the case with publicly traded companies, by the way. So it's not actually unusual that a privately held ESOP would not have votes, and that they're not actually structured that way.
Yeah. But it is the assumption that the public would make.
Yeah. But I think there's something a little deeper too, which is in an organization like Landmark, where they are enrolling people that, hey, use us as your tool to come make a difference in the world. And they do enroll us that we are stakeholders, even if we're not shareholders. We are stakeholders. And so it's not unusual. I am the enterprise,
right? That's what they have to say, right?
Exactly.
I am the enterprise.
So enterprise, if you're wondering why all these nosy people have all these questions or are freaking out, it's because you just spent 20 some years. I'll just take the Landmark years, not even the ones before, but enrolling people that they were the enterprise. So when the enterprise makes a major shift, like going bankrupt, all those people that you enroll that are the enterprise, they want to know, wait, what just happened to my enterprise? What's going on? And the press release that Landmark's putting out is insufficient for the level of commitment and concern that people have. And then there's degrees, obviously, as some people have a financial stake, some people just have an emotional stake, all those things. So in the new world, like on this side of the line, in the new world of self-development, transparency wins. If you want trust, you need transparency.
Yeah. We have Gen Z to thank for that. They're just like, we got to see it all, and I think we grew up, we're Gen X, you and I, we grew up in this notion of like, fend for yourself, and if you get disappointed that something turned out to not be the thing, well. They're not standing up for it. They're like, nope, transparency. We're going to hold your feet to the fire. We're going to hold you to account to be who you say you are.
And another thing I've seen on most Gen Xers and I'm not very proud of. So, and I've done it. I've done it too, which is, well, it happens everywhere. So what's the problem? Like we are such a barrier. We are such a barrier to progress with that. Like, okay, well, every company's corrupt. So what's the problem?
Yeah. Everyone cheats on their taxes. God, so you should also do that and see how much you can get away with, right?
That's right. Well, if he can do it, I'm going to do it too.
Hey,
and
I
And then
mean,
we
look,
wonder,
not for nothing, but try being married to someone who grew up in the Russian culture, right? You know,
oh
my husband's
boy,
from Kazakhstan, but they're very Russian culturally. And he's
yeah,
just like, sometimes he can't understand why I would say, well, no, you gotta tell one on yourself, or you gotta fess up. He's like, why? If you can get away with it and no one knows, just get away with it. You know, and again, I'm
right.
not saying anything negative about
We're
my
not
husband
advocating for that.
or
Yeah.
the
Or,
culture, but it is like, look, I mean, look, you're talking about a culture where, you know, blackmail is the fastest way to get anything done.
well, and I think understanding sometimes gets confused with acceptance. So because for me, I think I was sharing with you even before we started recording, like when I understand something, my nervous system calms down. Like I can go, okay, it makes sense. Like there's a kind of safety for me in understanding. There's a kind of nervous system, mental safety when I understand something. Then I can decide whether I agree or I'm for it or whatever. But I first want to understand. That's just the way I'm wired. And I think others are too. But understanding doesn't mean I agree, doesn't mean I accept, doesn't mean I'm aligned. It's just like, oh, that's how it works.
Yeah.
Now that I know how it works, I can say, do I want to be a part of that? Do I not? Do I want to take a stand for
Yeah.
work
It's
in a
that first
different
step.
way? Like it is that first step. And I think that's one of the things that's happened in our discourse and public discourse a lot is, we need to slow down, do the thing, don't just take your headline like, hey,
Yeah.
wow, okay. I mean, even that's what Brian and Eric did. They're like, wait, they read the PR announcement and then it says in there right towards the bottom, and we put, a subsidiary filed bankruptcy. And they're like, wait, what subsidiary? We have
Yeah.
subsidiaries? What are subsidiaries?
Yeah.
And then
And that entity is the entity that signed my paychecks. So I got to examine that more, right?
At first, we don't even know what entity. So then they go, and then an ESOP letter comes, to all the shareholders and has a little bit more explanation. But then that's where it's like, oh, but that's not the one that signed my paychecks, and isn't that the one I worked for? I was like, wait, how can that be a small subsidiary that holds the leases? I don't understand.
Yeah.
So, let me just go find this bankruptcy filing because it's available, it's public record, and maybe that'll explain it. And anyway, and then they find the New Era organization. The New Era organization was created and the old one was merged. And then, so now the old one that has been the one is now a subsidiary of the new organization that was started in July.
We flopped, right?
I call it the Alex Jones plan, because it's been in the news lately.
It's common business practice, and it's an accepted business practice to go, okay, well, we're going to reorganize this and flip this, and then that's going to file for bankruptcy. Now this is the new thing, and But I'm saying that people want to excuse it.
It's actually a recent loophole that's
become common.
It's not quite as common as you think, because it is pretty unethical in a lot of people's opinions. I don't even know what my opinion is about it. A lot of people are, because I was on some calls this week where we were talking about it, but it's a loophole. Like so many things happening in our society right now, we're seeing the weaknesses in the dam, in the systems that we have, that we're reliant on particular sets of ethics and values that are now can't be taken for granted, right? And so now we're having to re-examine our systems, all of them. And this is another one. And, we'll see how that all turns out. But, our thing is just there's a lot of people that have a lot of questions. So we are going to answer questions, and we are going to be honest, and we're going to be fair.
Yep. So, So again, if you want to read more detail or hear more of the details, go over to that podcast and listen to that. They did a lot of work there. This has been great. I think it's been a good pause for us to stop and kind of reevaluate things and look at what's happened.
Can we give a little shout out
true
to
ourselves
Ed?
up. Yeah. Let's do a quick shout out for our our first guest, Ed Gurewitz, who we did 2 episodes with, and he really did give us a lot of background of those early days. Right, he was around during EST.
We have some future conversations
reformulation
planned with him also, but I just really appreciated, like for me, the history of where that brought us to this line is so important. If we want to create a future, we want to understand our history. Otherwise, we'll just kind of do the history, maybe a little speeded up. But so I just really appreciated that. And those were fun episodes, and it was fun to hear his stories. I got bunches of more questions, so we'll have him back.
And mainly we can acknowledge Ed for being our first guest. And, as we're learning this, and again, we want to address that, it can sometimes feel a little messy, even in the conversation. Right. And a lot of people were saying, oh, let him talk. You keep interrupting. We're learning. right? Both of us are learning. We're working on this. It's becoming a little bit more fluid. And but really, Ed, thank you for for being our first and for kind of helping us develop the style that we're working in. And we're going to have more. Yeah. So
That's right.
thanks, Anne.
That's awesome.
And yeah, till
Thanks.
next time. This is Confronting the Line.